James Whitfield was 68 years old. He lived in a modest apartment in a small town in Ohio. A man who had spent over 40 years working at the same manufacturing plant. He started on the production floor and worked his way up to shift supervisor. It was never a glamorous career. But James had never missed a single shift without good reason. He showed up when his back ached. He showed up when he had a fever. He showed up the morning his first grandson was born, finished his shift, and then drove to the hospital. That was the kind of man he was. Discipline was not something James chose. It was simply who he was. And then that 40-year chapter quietly ended on a Friday afternoon in late spring. James cleaned out his locker, handed in his safety gear, and accepted handshakes from men he had worked beside for decades. Someone brought a sheet cake. A few of the younger guys looked genuinely sad to see him go. His replacement, a 29-year-old with a firm grip and careful eyes, thanked him for everything he had built. James clapped him on the shoulder and told him to work hard. When he walked through the plant exit for the last time, he stopped for a moment. He had walked through that door over 15,000 times. He looked at it once, said nothing, and turned away. That evening his wife, Carol, had dinner ready when he got home. Nothing fancy. Pot roast and green beans. The same meal she had been making since their first apartment together. They sat across from each other and ate quietly. The television was off. It had been a long time since they had eaten in silence like this. Carol set down her fork after a while and said, simply, "We made it." James nodded slowly. Those two words held everything they had postponed for 4 decades. A real vacation somewhere warm. Sunday mornings without an alarm. Maybe a road trip along the coast. Small things, ordinary things, but to them those things had always felt like a reward. Waiting at the finish line. Social Security was coming. That was the foundation. Everything else could be built on top of it. The first few weeks after retirement were strange. James did not know what to do with his mornings. He woke at 5 out of habit and lay in the dark, his body waiting for a signal that never came. He started walking the neighborhood each morning just to have somewhere to go. An hour out, an hour back. Carol joked that he was covering more ground than most people half his age. James smiled but kept walking. He was waiting for the month when the first Social Security deposit would arrive. Once that happened, he believed everything would settle. The money he had paid in for 40 years was coming back to him. That thought kept him steady. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. James was sitting at the kitchen table with his second cup of coffee when Carol brought in the mail. The official envelope from the Social Security Administration was on top. He opened it carefully. He read the first line. Then he read it again. Then he set the letter flat on the table and stared at it without blinking. The monthly benefit amount listed was less than half of what he had estimated. Every year for the past decade, he had checked the SSA website more times than he could remember. He knew the numbers. He had planned around those numbers. But the number in front of him now was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. He did not tell Carol. Not yet. He told himself it was a clerical error. There was no reason to alarm her before he understood what had happened. That night he could not sleep. He lay there running calculations in his head, trying to find the explanation. 40 years of contributions, consistent earnings, no gaps he could account for. The number still made no sense. He stared at the ceiling until almost 3 in the morning. He called the Social Security Administration the next day. He was on hold for nearly 40 minutes. When he finally reached a representative, he explained the situation. Clearly and calmly, the way he had always approached problems at the plant. The representative asked for his Social Security number and date of birth, then went quiet for a moment. When she came back, she told him that her records showed a period of self-employment income reported under his Social Security number spanning several years. During that period, he had been reclassified as self-employed, and the earnings reported during that window did not align with what would have been expected from his primary employer. This had affected his benefit calculation significantly. She recommended he visit his local SSA field office to review the records in person. Self-employment, James said. He said the word out loud as if testing it. He had never been self-employed. He had worked for the same company for over 40 years. How his name and number had been attached to Self-employment income was something he could not begin to explain. He asked Carol about it when he got off the phone. She stared at him. "What are you talking about?" she said. They looked at each other across the kitchen table. 2 days later, James drove to the SSA field office. The caseworker printed out the relevant records and placed them on the desk between them. There it was. His name, his social security number, years of self-employment income reported under his identity, during a period when he had been working full-time at the plant. The caseworker told him gently that if he had not filed those returns himself, it was possible someone with access to his personal information had used his identity. She said the word carefully. Identity. James picked up the papers and thanked her. His hands were steady but his legs were not. Outside, the sky was bright and the parking lot smelled like warm asphalt and cut grass. Spring. James sat in his car for a long time without starting it. He looked at the papers in his hands. His name, his number, years of someone else's business reported under his identity, earning him nothing and costing him everything he had planned for. He thought about who could have done this. Really thought about it. Not Carol. Never Carol. That left one person. His son, Derek, 42 years old, running a landscaping and property management company. He had started 6 years ago. James had been proud of Derek for building something from the ground up. He had said so at the time. He remembered saying so. He did not eat dinner that night either. Carol noticed but did not push. 41 years of marriage had taught them both the difference between a silence that needs to be broken and one that needs to be held. James sat in the living room as the light outside went from orange to gray to nothing. And in that quiet he understood something he had been circling around all day. Someone had used his name, without asking, without telling him, and while his name was out there, doing things he knew nothing about, his retirement had been quietly, steadily reduced. He closed his eyes. The next morning James called his son. Derek picked up on the second ring, relaxed and cheerful. "Hey Dad, everything okay?" James took a breath and said that he had visited the SSA office, and that there were years of self-employment income reported under his social security number, and that he needed Derek to tell him what he knew about that. There was a long pause on the other end. Then silence. Then more silence. James waited. "Derek." His voice was flat and quiet. "Was that you?" It was not a question. Derek exhaled slowly. "Dad." That was all he said. James ended the call. He set the phone down on the table. He sat very still for a moment and then he walked to the couch and sat down heavily. The way a man sits when his legs have decided the conversation is over, before his mind has caught up. 3 days passed. Then Derek drove down. He was at the door on a Saturday morning, and when James opened it, his son looked like he had not slept in days. They sat at the kitchen table. Carol stayed in the bedroom. She understood without being told. Derek talked for a long time. When he had started the company, the first 2 years had been tight. A tax advisor had suggested he could reduce his liability by running some income through a family member's identity, framing it as a consulting arrangement. Derek said he had not fully understood the implications. He said he never thought it would affect his father's benefits. He said he had planned to fix it, had meant to fix it, had kept telling himself he would fix it before it became a problem. And then 1 year became 2 and 2 became 3. And the whole thing had quietly grown into something he did not know how to undo. He said he had not told his father because he did not want to worry him. He said he was sorry. He said it more than once, and the last time he said it, his voice broke completely. James listened to all of it. He sat with his hands flat on the table and listened without interrupting. When Derek finished, James did not respond immediately. He was remembering the day Derek had told him he was starting his own business. They had been sitting at this same table. Derek had been nervous, half expecting pushback. James had said, "That's good. Make it work." And then they had talked about something else. James had not asked how Derek planned to handle the financial side. Had not offered to help him find a reputable accountant. Had not asked any of the questions a father who was paying attention might have asked. He had said, "Make it work," and left it at that. He thought about that now. He was not letting Derek off the hook. But he was also honest enough to see that some of the distance between them had existed long before this moment.